This episode of Lawyers Tell All is brought to you by Law Firm Conversions. If your law firm's phone is ringing, that only means your marketing is successful. It's what happens when the phone is answered that will drive your success or failure. Visit www.intakeacademy.com and claim your free copy of this groundbreaking book, along with resources on mental health for intake specialists and empathy. Plus, become eligible to receive a free 15-minute consult with Chris Mullins. Welcome to the Lawyers Tell All podcast, where Chris Mullins, the preeminent sales and communications consultant in the legal industry, shows you how it looks through lawyers' eyes. Here, innovators in the trenches provide powerful insights that help you connect with new clients, handle the sometimes harsh realities of the legal profession, and embrace the mindsets needed to succeed. Be sure to visit our website at www.lawyerstellall.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, lean in, tune in, and let's take a deep dive.
Hello, everyone. It's Chris Mullins with Lawyers Tell All and Intake Academy. And today I'm interviewing attorney Ryan Byers, and I'm going to let Ryan tell you a little bit about himself.
Hello, Chris. Thank you for talking to me this afternoon. As you've indicated, my name is Ryan Byers. I have been practicing law for the last 15 years. And for that entire 15-year period of time, I have been located in Jacksonville, Illinois, with the law firm of Rammelkamp Bradney, which is a firm that's been in existence since 1895. Most folks listening to this, I'm going to assume, have probably never heard of Jacksonville, Illinois, or think I misspoke and I actually meant Jacksonville, Florida. I didn't. I meant Illinois. Jacksonville is in the west central part of Illinois. If folks know where Springfield, the capital of the state and the home of Abraham Lincoln, is, we're about 40 miles west of there on the interstate. And I've been here this whole time, mostly handling civil litigation matters for our clients throughout central Illinois.
All right. Well, so before we kind of started, you were talking a little bit about the rule aspect of running a law firm. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jacksonville is in Morgan County, Illinois. The population of the entire county is about 32,000 people, 19,000 of which are in Jacksonville. So very much a rural area, very much an area where the economy is powered by agriculture. Don't get me wrong, we've got a lot of other, great small businesses and hardworking people, but far and away we are agrarian, and it's the sort of area that I grew up in. I didn't grow up exactly where I'm located now, but very similar background, and it's a situation where I have really come to, over the last 15 years, grow to enjoy some of the aspects of practicing in a rural area. A lot of people now, and I read articles from, national, international publications talking about how people want and strive for work-life balance. And in 2023, you want to work hard and you want to advance professionally, but, you want to have time for your family. You want to have time for your avocations as well as your vocation. And that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about, being in West Central Illinois for these past 15 years is I'm able to come to the office, I'm able to work hard, I'm able to put out what I hope is a high quality legal product for my clients, tackle some novel legal issues from time to time. But, I'm also not billing, nor to live do I need to bill, north of 2,000 hours a year. And I've got opportunities to pursue some of my other interests as well.
Okay, so what are some of your other interests?
Oh boy. Well, I've got a small family. I love my wife Amy. I love my rescue dog, big fat black lab Brutus. So I'll be walking.
Have there right now?
What's
No?
that?
Your lab there right now?
No, no, I'm at the
Oh,
office. So otherwise I would
yeah.
put him on the podcast and he could maybe pant at the listeners.
Yeah.
But I'll be hiking around with him on the weekends to the extent that he'll let me, because he's getting up there in years.
Uh-huh.
But I'm also I'm a big theater person.
Okay.
That was, I was a performer when I was younger and in high school and in college. I don't do much of that anymore, but I like to take in quite a bit of theater. And
Mhm.
that's one of the nice things about, being located where I am is, as you can probably imagine, a town of 19,000 people doesn't exactly have a huge thriving theater scene, but,
Mhm.
I'm an hour and a half drive from St. Louis. I'm a 3 hour drive from Chicago. I'm a
Mhm.
3.5 hour drive from Indianapolis. I'm a comfortable flight from, New York. So I'll
Mhm.
hit any of those cities and a couple
Oh,
of others and take in a show.
yeah, that's interesting. Now, when we were kind of chatting before we went live, you had mentioned, let's see, I wrote down the idea of the various opportunities that really exist
Hmm.
in your neck of the woods. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll talk primarily about what I'm seeing in my own backyard, and I'll expand a little bit because it's not unique to us.
Mhm.
Um, Unfortunately, we're in a situation where in a lot of towns that look like the one that I'm in, there's a generation of attorneys that have been practicing here for 30, 40 years, and they are either in the process of winding down,
Mhm.
or they've just retired outright. And unfortunately, there are not a lot of people coming up behind them to
Mhm.
replace them.
Mhm.
And yes, there are a handful, but there aren't enough.
Mhm.
And as I alluded to, that's not just the case here in Jacksonville. As I talk to some of my colleagues who are in other small communities, and mainly I'm talking to people throughout the Midwest and the South, though I assume it's the case nationwide. Uh, Legal services are drying up in rural markets. And it's unfortunate because it's leaving potential clients underserved.
Mhm.
However, the flip side of that is when I'm talking to new attorneys, young attorneys, I'm telling them, hey, this creates a really exciting opportunity for you, because you can move into one of these markets and you have the opportunity to effectively write your own ticket. You
Mhm.
have the opportunity to pick up some relatively, large books of business.
Mhm.
Um, but, you're not going to necessarily be making gobs and gobs of money, or at least not the same salary you would get in downtown New York or downtown Chicago,
Mhm.
but you're going to make a good, comfortable living. And even though, the income might be smaller, the income you do make is going to go a lot further, being located here, and you will, in all likelihood, um, be very happy if you're anything like me.
Yeah. And so does it, are you worried about the idea that there's not a lot of legal services increasing,
Mhm.
behind the folks that are retiring?
Yeah, I am. And I don't remember where I first heard it, but there's an old saying that uh, one lawyer in a small town will starve, and two lawyers in a small town will thrive. And really, what we're seeing is uh, sort of a variation on that saying. Uh, because yes, I'm here and I'm in a firm with six other attorneys, and we're able to do good work for our clients. But there's only so much we can do.
Mhm.
And there's only so much that we can do, number one, in the sense that we only have so much time, but
Mhm.
also in the sense that, there is such a thing in the world as a conflict of interest. And, we cannot take every single case, because taking every single case means, taking some cases that would be adverse to our current clients or our longstanding clients, which, as everybody listening to this knows, our ethical rules say
Mhm.
that we can't do. So if, we can't take everything, we need some degree of competition. And really, there are two options if that competition doesn't manifest itself locally, which number one is that, entities from, larger cities, if they're willing and able to, expand their reach and they move in and try to take what they can, in which case the people who are here locally, they'll still be getting service, but they're not going to be getting the sort of personal service and direct service they do from somebody in their backyard. Or number two, frankly, there are just a lot of people who will go unserved. Those are
Yeah.
the only two possibilities unless we do something to stem the tide and hopefully attract folks to places like Jacksonville and similar communities throughout the country.
Yeah, and so like when you were talking about like firms in bigger cities, expanding their reach, that's the first thing I thought about is, okay, yeah, that's probably going to happen. It probably already is happening, but everybody, the folks that are in your backyard won't really appreciate the kind of service that they'll get. I'm sure that the legal services will be, I mean, they'll be good, but it's the relationships will be not what they're accustomed to. So it'll be difficult for them, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there are some people who, just because of the economics of it, will be squeezed out. I
Yeah.
mean, again, I talked about the fact that I'm probably not making as much money as somebody in downtown Chicago, because the local market doesn't really allow me to, right? I've got to fix my rates in such a way that they're in line with people's expectations and people's incomes here. And if we're talking about, larger outfits moving into smaller communities, it makes it more difficult because, and I'm not trying to, begrudge any of those people their chance to make a living, but chances are good that, they're going to have to, because of their economic reality, charge bigger city rates
Mhm.
in smaller towns, which would only potentially compound the issue of some people in these smaller towns having to be unserved or underserved.
Mhm. Okay, so let me ask you this. Who do you think the ideal um, attorney is? What's the profile of that person that would be a really pretty good fit? At least now, they would be happy there. Like,
Mhm.
who is that person?
Sure. Yeah, it's an individual who has a work ethic, because even though I indicated earlier that the work-life balance out here is really great, that doesn't mean that there aren't days that you won't work hard.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean there aren't days that, I'm in the office until 10 o'clock at night. Yes,
Mhm.
that still happens. However, it's not happening for weeks on end, and it's not happening, you know, monthly or, bi-weekly.
Mhm.
So you do still need to have the work ethic. You need to have an entrepreneurial spirit,
Okay.
uh, because we are talking about individuals who, in a lot of sense or in a lot of circumstances, might be hanging out their own shingle. Or even if you're not hanging out your own shingle and you're joining a firm like mine, which has about 7 attorneys, uh, in a 7 attorney firm, you've got to do some of the management work.
Mhm.
And in a 3 attorney firm and a 4 attorney firm, you've got to do some of the management
Mhm.
work. So, you have to think as much as a business owner as you do being an attorney.
Mhm.
And really just genuine, honest people as well. Because the people that we represent, they are, again, a lot of farmers, a lot of folks who are in, the hunting industry, because we're in a big deer hunting area as well. And these are honest, straightforward people who don't put on a lot of airs,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to communicate and relate to those sorts of folks.
Okay. So is this particular attorney, is this a young person? Is it someone, do you think that would look to go there to get their feet wet, get some really good experience, and then potentially move on to another, either stay or somewhere else, or they go there to practice law and begin their family? What if you had to pin it down a little bit, what do you think?
I think the answer is yes.
Yes, yes, and
Yes,
yes.
yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
The perfect scenario for the communities, or the best scenario for the communities that I would be talking about, it would be an individual who is willing to put down roots and really have their career here. And I say that because one of the things that we've noticed in our firm, and I think, the firms up and down my street would say the same thing, is we have been able to, by virtue of where we are and the types of relationships we form, we have what I call multi-generational clients.
Oh.
Grandpa
Mhm.
brought his legal work here, and then, granddaughter did, and, dad did in between. So, there is something to be said for that sort of consistency, because the client appreciates that sort of consistency.
Right.
So, somebody who could come in young and put in 30 to 30 plus years, that would be ideal. But really, more than anything else, what the communities need
Yeah.
is legal service.
Right.
So, if it's somebody who's going to come and, just put in 5 or 10 years for whatever reason,
Mm.
okay, great. We can hire that person, and, we can have a mutually beneficial relationship. But, I think the best thing for the communities are the folks who are going to be in it for the long haul.
Okay. So I want to talk about your firm in a moment, but just tell me a little bit, try to paint a picture for me about what your day is like.
Mhm.
So what's your day like? Let's just say at the office for you. What's it like?
Yeah, there's some variation, as you can imagine, but typically, I'm rolling in here at about 8:30 in the morning. I'm one of the latecomers. Most of our folks are here, 7:30 or 8, but I never adjusted to being a morning person totally. I'm normally rolling in at about 8:30 in the morning. I'm checking in with my assistant to see what phone messages, emails, he's gotten that I need to follow up on. And I try to structure my days so that I'm not all over the place engaging in a bunch of different types
Mhm.
of task. I
Mhm.
try to get all of my depositions booked for a day if I can. I try to get all my new client meetings booked for a day if I can, just so that I can put myself in one particular mindset for the
Right.
day.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'm focusing on whatever the consolidated task for that day is.
Mhm.
But of course, just like anybody else, I'm being interrupted by the email that you didn't expect, the phone call
Mhm.
that you didn't expect. Um, and then the other thing that some folks might not necessarily realize is, being located where we are, I'm actually doing a decent amount of travel,
Mhm.
and travel by car, uh, because yes, I have cases and I have clients right here in Jacksonville and in Morgan County, but the counties that are within a 45-minute hour driving radius of us, with the exception of Springfield and Sangamon County to the east, they're even smaller and they're even more rural.
Mhm.
So they also, even more than us, are having issues with sufficient levels of legal services.
Yeah.
So, I'm, several days a month, maybe 10 days a month, I'm driving to an adjacent county or a county that's 2 or even 3 over, uh, not to meet with folks necessarily, because normally for meetings people come to me, but certainly for court appearances, depositions, I'm taking those things out of town. And one of the things I guess I didn't mention, at least as it relates to my specific area, which I find neat, is, um, I'm in a lot of the towns, and in some limited cases, the very same buildings, where Abraham Lincoln was practicing law when he was an attorney before he launched into politics. So that's the other benefit in some of these smaller communities is you get to absorb some really neat, unique local history.
Yeah, awesome. So, why did you become an attorney?
I became an attorney because, at least where I was being educated, maybe about fifth or sixth grade was where they really started to talk to you about what it was that you could do for a living, or started to kind of get you thinking about what you might do after high school. And it was really, researching it in those later elementary, early middle school classes, because adults were asking me, what do you want to do?
Right.
And I was able to realize even at that young age that whatever I do, I'm probably going to do it for a while, so I need to take this seriously. And I realized that being a lawyer was a job that involved a lot of writing. It was a job that involved a lot of public speaking, and it was a job that involved a lot of problem solving. And even, as an older child, young teenager, I put it together and I realized those are all things I really enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, the idea came to me very young and I stuck with it. And
Mm-hmm.
I considered other things here and there, but never really shook from that original career path. It's just, where I felt I had skills that could be applied successfully, and knock
Mm-hmm.
on wood, that's been the case up to this point. So,
So, who influenced you to go ahead and stick with it? Like, or what was it? Was it a book that you read? What was it? And you said, you know what, I'm sticking with this. This is it for me.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm from a blue collar family, by and large, so it's not a situation in which, I was looking at, Uncle Bob who had his own law practice, or I wasn't even really necessarily looking at a lot of people um, who had professional careers. But even still, the people that I would say that influenced me the most were my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is they again, they didn't necessarily have any idea what it was like to be an attorney, but when I said that this was something that I was interested in pursuing, I think that they saw that I was genuine about it,
Mm-hmm.
and they made it abundantly clear that whatever they could do to support that, they were going to do it. And we're not necessarily talking about people of a lot of financial means. And
Right. Mm-hmm.
one time I remember my dad, when I was maybe 13, 14 years old, he said to me, and he was a plumber, he worked construction, and he said, you do this law school thing, I'll keep doing my work to pay for it. And if I've got to get a second job flipping burgers to get you through, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's amazing. Awesome. Excellent. So, talk a little bit about firm. You said it's been around since the 1800s.
Yeah, 1895 was when the firm was founded, and it was founded here in Jacksonville by a man named L.O. Vaught. And if any listeners out there are familiar with Glacier National Park
Mm-hmm.
out west, there is a Mount Vaught in Glacier National Park. It is named after L.O. Vaught, the man who founded our
Oh,
firm,
okay.
because he was part of an early group that went out and camped in that area and was kind of instrumental in having that area set aside to become a national park. So just an interesting little bit of history there. Yeah, been around since 1895. Currently, we have 7 attorneys. In my time here, we've gone up and down, and we've had, I think, as many as 12. And what we try to do at present, some people use the phrase general practice firm to describe a firm where you can get all of your needs met. And I have always kind of cringed when
Mm-hmm.
somebody calls us a general practice firm, because that, in my mind, that's a firm where you go, and again, no offense to the people who do it, but in my mind, a general practice firm is a firm where you go and every lawyer does a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the attorney might be drawing up a deed 1 hour of the day, and then they might be meeting with their criminal defense client the next hour. And that's not what we do. Yes, we're in a small town, and as a result of the fact that we're in a small town, we don't necessarily specialize in one area as much as some others might, but all 7 of us do try to specialize to an extent. So I focus my practice almost exclusively on civil litigation work. I've got a partner who focuses his practice, almost exclusively on tax and corporate transactions. We've got a couple of attorneys who focus their careers almost exclusively on probate and trust administration. So instead of referring to us as a general practice firm, I like to refer to us as a full service firm.
Full service.
Yes, because
you don't want to say one-stop shopping. You don't want to say that. No?
I don't want to go quite that far. Because if I say one-stop shop, the next thing I might be running a blue light special, and that's just a little bit too.
No.
That's a little bit too chintzy.
Yeah.
There are a small handful of things we don't do. We really don't do any criminal work. We don't do any immigration work. We don't do consumer side bankruptcy work. Though we have some creditors we represent in bankruptcy from time to time. But by and large, other than those things I mentioned, we try to provide a full range of legal services that people in West Central Illinois would need.
Yeah, okay. So, but when we talked about the ideal profile, wouldn't it also be the attorney that they're just burnt out like where they are and the big city, and they still want to practice, but they just want to they want to settle down a little bit.
Yeah, that individual absolutely could come and could certainly make a go of it. I have not run into the person yet who has made that transition. But I'm not saying that they don't exist and it's not a possibility. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are, if they meet the criteria that I met earlier in terms of, being willing to work hard to the expectations of the area, being intelligent, being entrepreneurial, they could be fresh out of school, or they could be somebody who's been at it for 20 years and looking for a change. And I know that we would talk to them. And I suspect that similarly situated law offices would as well.
Let me just ask you another question, because you said it a couple times. Tell me what you mean by entrepreneurial. I mean, I know what it is, but like with you at your firm, what's that mindset like?
Yeah, so that mindset is everybody is actually invested in the business side of running a law firm. Because there are individuals in large firms, in fact the majority of individuals in large firms who come in, they devote their entire day to the substantive practice of law, and yes, they're probably involved in their billing, and yes, they're probably involved in setting their hourly rates to a degree, but they don't necessarily give a lot of thought, or even if they give thought to it, they don't have a lot of authority to impact the other business operations. So the best example I can give you is, we have a firm business meeting once a month. And at that firm business meeting, every attorney in the firm is present. And we are all discussing the things that need to be done to move the business side of the firm forward. So we are all reviewing our budget, and we are all reviewing our receipts against our budget and our receipts against our historical performance. We are, even though we have individuals who chair different committees and lead different aspects, we are all talking about significant hiring decisions in terms of both attorney and non-attorney personnel. We are all talking about employee compensation. We are all talking about what the firm is doing to market its practice. We are all talking about the physical building that we are all in, and the types of computers that we're going to buy. And we spent more time than I cared to spend at a recent meeting talking about who our new, VoIP phone vendor is going to be because the old one got bought out. So, you have to want to participate in those kinds of conversations and decisions as well. And that's not unique to our firm. That's the case with a lot of, smaller firms, because in addition to being the one that's doing the substantive work that brings the money in the door, before I hopped on this podcast, I was the one also signing the checks to pay it out.
Right. Yeah. So, but even like at larger firms, there's the business side that I see with my clients is where we're still needing to grow is client communication.
Right.
Caring enough. I mean, yes, the attorneys, they care, right? But caring enough that they want to do everything they can to retain the client and know that how they service the client, it's not just about the law.
Yeah.
And that part of the business in the larger firms, that's just missing the business mindset still today. So you're talking more about like the operational side. There's that, but there's also that side too. And that's a problem. Why do you think that law schools don't teach law students anything about any of this that we're talking about? What I just said and about what you said about the operational side.
I think it's because the majority of the professors haven't done it.
Yeah.
And that's not meant as a knock on law professors, but at least when I was in school, in the sense that I get is, you don't have a lot of professors that have actually practiced for more than a couple of years. A lot of them are academics.
Yeah.
So, they're teaching what they know from an academic and a hypothetical perspective of the law. And, I wish and I hope and I know that there has been some movement towards schools teaching more practical skills and more pragmatic skills. One of the most valuable courses I had in law school was a 2-hour, 2 nights a week course called Law Practice. And, they had an adjunct professor who was a practicing attorney. And the reason it was a night class is because the professor was a practicing attorney. And, he taught us things like how to sit down and have an intake interview with a new client. And, he told us tips like, during that first intake meeting, maybe you don't want to have your nose and your pen affixed to your legal pad writing down everything they say, because, it might be your, just to use an example, it might be your 100th divorce that you've handled, but it's the first divorce that they've been involved in.
Yeah, exactly.
So, take the extra step and listen to them the first time, as opposed to writing down the details. And he taught us how to actually negotiate and communicate with other attorneys and, deal with, unfortunately, the ones that can be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
And that was one course in one school, gosh, almost 20 years ago now. But I hope we can see some progression, and certainly, I think the rise of clinics in law schools are helping out with that quite a bit, because you've got students who are able to get limited licenses and do some limited practice and learn more of those skills.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So, any last words for everybody? What else would you like everyone to know before we say so long?
Yeah, I think that I just want to remind everybody that there are people like me who live in what is sometimes derisively referred to as flyover country, who own and operate and run productive businesses, who are making a good living, who are satisfied with their lives, and who are trying to do the absolute best that they can for their clients. And I want people to know that there's need for more of us.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not necessarily under the impression that I'm going to do this podcast and this podcast is going to cause, 300 resumes or 300 attorneys to send their resume into
Right.
me. But, if it causes somebody to, somebody who's in Los Angeles to think, man, I want to relocate to the middle of South Dakota and set up a practice in a small town there, that
Yeah.
doesn't really help Ryan Byers at all. But I think it helps rural communities. It helps those individuals. And if I can get somebody to consider that, even if it's not for my direct benefit, I consider
Right.
that a win.
That's
And
cool.
if people want to talk to me about those issues, they're, more than I'm more than willing to have them reach out and have that conversation. My email address is my first initial and my last name, RBYERS at rblawyers.net. Or they can track me down on LinkedIn, Google me. I'm findable.
You're fine. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right, everyone. So long. It's Chris Mullins with Lawyers Tell All. We'll see you again real soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to Lawyers Tell All, where Chris Mullins takes you on a journey with lawyers in the trenches who show you the realities of what it takes to succeed in this chaotic, crowded, ever-changing profession. Remember to visit our website at www.lawyerstellall.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on Lawyers Tell All.